All right, I think we're live. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on another awesome webinar to make your guitar life easier. I'm Thomas Byers with the Thomas Byers Guitar Studio, and today we are covering the capo, or really capo theory. You know, a lot of people you see playing in bands, on stage, your friends, etc., may be using a capo. And something that's come up recently here at the studio with a few students is, what is the capo? How does it work? How can I use it to play more confidently and play more interesting things, etc., etc.? So that's what we're going to cover today, capo theory. So if you don't have a capo, we're going to talk about the kinds you should get. If you don't have a capo, now's the time to go get one. So you'll notice a lot of the times that I'm playing nylon string guitars. That's just my personal preference. I have electric guitars, I have steel string guitars, but it's important to know that the nylon string guitar and a steel string guitar have different neck shapes. So that means we need different capos to accommodate them. So I just have here your standard clip-on capo. It's a Kaiser. There are some other brands, but these tend to last a while and work pretty well. My favorite capo to use is called a Chub, C-H-U-B-B. That's because there's no spring to wear out on those ones, but they're a little more pricey. Anyway, so if you're using a nylon string guitar, you're going to need to get a capo that clearly states on the package classical capo, or for classical guitar, because the neck on the fretboard on the classical guitar is completely flat, and so you need a capo that is completely flat as well. Whereas an acoustic guitar, or steel string acoustic guitar, there's a slightly convex. It has a tiny little hill that goes over the fretboard. So you need to get one that says steel string guitar, and you'll notice on the flat part of your capo that it will accommodate that little hill that's happening on your neck. Electric guitars, you will need to use a steel string one as well, and they make capos for all sorts of other strung instruments too, the banjo as well. Make sure you're buying the right capo. That's first and foremost. So there's two things we can do with the capo. That's what we're going to cover today. The first thing is use it to help with accompanying someone who's singing, or yourself if you are singing. And you'll notice at the bottom of the video page here, there's a couple of links. After the video, please read through the chord construction, because we're going to be talking a whole lot about chords and 1 chords, 4 chords, 5 chords. And that's just a thing I put together for online lessons that helps reinforce our learners' knowledge of what a chord actually is, how it functions in music. So take a look at those after this, or now, and start reading through and following along there. Anyway, so to help with singing, that's the whole first primary point of a capo. You see this a lot in flamenco music and folk music, people playing just for themselves. We all have different vocal ranges, and it's helpful if we're not super accomplished guitar players, that we can use the same chord shapes all across the neck to accommodate different singing ranges. A range is simply how low or how high an instrument or a voice can go. You'll have to excuse my singing, because I'm going to have to give you some examples. So I'm just going to start with Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, though I'll be doing more of a singing version of it. If you've heard the original, he does more of a talking sort of thing. It's still lovely. Anyway, so the first thing you have to know is what pitch you're starting on. So this song happens to be in the key of C major, and the 1 chord, or the first chord in that key of C, is a C major. So I need to find out what pitch that song starts on. Now I've already done this. It is the G. It, just like that. I heard there was, it goes like this. So it's that open 3rd string. So I'm going to sing it here without a capo in this particular range, and then I'm going to show you how we can make that range higher, and then try a way to make it lower. which is where things get a little more complicated. So we have, let's see here, the lyrics. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? So that's it. Now let's say that was a really tough range for me to sing. Please, I'll acknowledge again, I'm not a great singer, but I like to sing, so I'm still going to do it. Now you'll notice when I put my capo on right at the first fret, and after I sing here a second, we'll go over exactly how I want you to put that on. You'll notice that everything is now a half step higher. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? So we had this starting pitch. Now we're going to go 1 fret higher. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? Let's go 1 more higher to make it clear how this works. Now we're at the 4th fret. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? So you'll notice that I'm using the exact same chord shapes over here. I used a C to A minor, C to A minor, F, G, and C. That didn't have to change one bit because I'm essentially just using this capo to move our nut, or this plastic or bone piece right here, up, thus shortening the length of my guitar and allowing me to use the same open strings I do first position. So again, we found that starting pitch. We use the exact same chord progression and chord shapes all across, all the way up to fret 4, and we could go as high as we wanted to. This is what I was talking about, vocal range. I can't sing this high, or I'll try, whatever. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? Holy crap, didn't even know that was going to work, but it did. Anyway, that's the benefit of a capo right there. If you know just a little bit off with the vocal range, you can shift your capo higher and use the exact same chord shapes. Now, if I were to do any of that with movable chord forms where you have to do a lot of barring, that's completely different. The structure of these chords is much different, much more complicated. You're having to use bar most of the time. So unless you're confident using those types of chords and having that chord vocabulary, then a capo is going to be a really good option for you, because all you'll need to know are a few keys and basic open position chords to play in any key all across your neck. It doesn't matter the vocalist's range, you can find it with chords that you already know. Now I mentioned I'd come back to talk about how we put this on our guitar. So that's really important. I want you to hear the difference. I'm going to be really, really careful with how I put this capo on at the 4th fret. And what I mean by that is that the capo is 100% parallel to the fret, the metal fret that it's going to go behind. And so I'm on the 4th fret. I want to make sure it goes as close to that fret as possible without muting strings. Again, we're just replicating this nut, or this plastic or bone piece. Notice that it's not cattywampus, and it's not sitting way back here. It has a very specific location so that our intonation or our tuning stays true. So there's that. That's is darn straight as I can get it and as close to the back of that metal fret as I can get it. Now here's that sound. Here's C major chord. Okay. Now I'm going to do it haphazardly. Who cares? Let's just get it on there. 4th fret. Especially these open strings. They're certainly flatter. It just doesn't sound quite as true as it would. So general practice, you're going to put your capo, whether it's a Shub, Kaiser, whatever kind you're using, parallel to that metal fret and as close to the back of that same metal fret as possible without muting anything. And it's right in tune there. So that's how you're going to put it on. Now, I'd mentioned with vocalizing that we could go up if we needed to find a high range. But what about going down? That's where things get a little more complicated, as I mentioned. So if we are already playing an open position, this C chord, well, I hate to tell you, we can't go any further down. It's just not going to work. So this is where understanding our fretboard and understanding a few keys really come into play with a capo. It's really important to know these. Many of you maybe have heard of the caged system. That's CGED system. All those are really is 5 keys that use a lot of open position chords to play all of the chords in those keys. And with those, being able to cycle through your guitar in terms of position and knowing exactly what chord shape, what quality of chord. I know that's a lot, so please read over the chord explanation linked at the bottom of this video. It explains everything step by step that you need to know about chords. Anyway, so back to caged, the caged system. Those are 5 keys that if you know every chord in that key, which really is only going to be 6 because we're not going to play the 7th scale degree chord that much. If you know the 6 chords for those 5 keys, you are set and ready to use your capo for any key across the fretboard, especially when you're trying to find a vocal range going lower. So let's see here. We know this song starts on our open 3rd string, our G. I heard, but what if we wanted to go lower? Like I said, we cannot go any lower here. So we're going to need to find that G, another string. And then we're going to need to use our knowledge of these chord shapes to work around that note. So another link below the video is all the notes on your fretboard. So if you can identify one note, you can find where that other note is on lower strings. Now keep in mind the fretboard is a wonky thing, and coming in August we're going to start doing some fretboard logic webinars to help you guys understand it a little more. But as a rule of thumb, if you want the same note on a different string, you're going to have to go to a lower string. You notice I'm pointing up when I say lower. That's because we think of instruments sonically. So it goes from high string to lower strings. So if you want to find that G, you have to go to a lower fret. Now that G is going to be at your 5th fret right there. So I know if I want to go to a lower vocal range, I need this note right here to be my starting pitch. And here's where it gets a little tricky. I've mentioned it already 3 or 4 times. Please read over that chord explanation document below this. I'm open to any questions too, thomas@thomasbyersguitar.com, or contact us through me through the website. I'm happy to review any of it with you. This is the best I could do in presenting this really clearly. So here comes some theory talk. That C major chord, that note that we started the chord with, is 5 notes away from C. I'll count for you, the musical alphabet being A through G and repeating continuously. So if I start on the note C, that's 1. Then we go to D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, and G is 5. So I'm now going to say I've identified the fact that my starting singing pitch over this C major chord is the 5th of the chord. C, D, E, F, G, that is 5 right there, 5, 5, 5. So I'm calling it a fifth because they are an interval of a fifth away, or they're separated by 5 notes, 1 and 5 being included in that separation. So back here, we know we start on the fifth of the chord. Now we're starting on this note a half step lower. And here's where we have to explore our caged chords and really try and find a shape that works, putting that note right there as the fifth of the chord. So let's see here. I already know that my A major form, so C A in the key of A, has this shape to it. And the more I acquaint myself with these chord shapes and their construction, I'll know or feel more comfortable understanding that the fifth of A is E. And it's right in that chord, right on the 4th string. Again, I had to go to a lower string to find that opening pitch and go down a half step. So we have, that's 1 half step lower. Anyway, so my A form, again, through reading through that packet and just becoming more familiar with your chord structures and the root 3, 5 of all of these, you'll be able to more quickly assess this. Anyway, so our A major chord, I already know that on the 4th string, it is the 5th because A, B, C sharp, D, E, I know that an E is a 5th away. And when I look at this chord shape, my first finger is covering, or however you finger your A major chord, it doesn't matter how, but we know that that A is our open 5th string, and there's our 5th right there. So what we can do now is say, all right, I'm going to now think of A chord shapes, and I'm going to think that I need to start it just like it would look, but on the 4th fret. So if I'm thinking my A usually starts on the 2nd fret, which it does, I'll notice that it uses my open 5th string as the root of that chord. So what we can do here is just think that it cycles up together. So if I needed to start my A chord on my 3rd fret, I would capo at the 1st fret. If I needed to start it at the 4th fret, which I do, I would need to capo it here at the 2nd fret, which is exactly what I'm going to do for our little experiment here, trying to find our best vocal range. Okay, so we've got the capo on there. And there we have it. So another thing you're going to see in the chord explanation document is that we number chords with Roman numerals based on where they're located in a key. And it's actually quite simple to think about. Let's just assume, well, I mean, not assume, there are 7 notes in any key, in all 15 keys that we have in Western music. There's 7 notes. And for each of those 7 notes that we call scale degrees, we have a chord that corresponds with it. Not only so for example, C major, I already mentioned before, is our 1 chord because it's the first note in that scale. But it's also a major chord. And not only do these scale degrees go in order through any key, but the quality of the chord, or major, minor, diminished 7, all will be uniform in every key. So let's take a step back yet again. If we were to play this in the key of C, it would have been useful for me to know that I'm playing the 1 chord in the key of C. Take this capo off here. 1 chord, going to the 6th chord, because my next chord is an A minor. So I just need to count C, D, E, F, G, A, 6. That's my 6th chord. So it goes like, or sorry, that's the wrong lyric. How's it start? I heard there was a secret chord. There's my 6th chord. So we're going to do the exact same thing, but think in A. On that chord explanation document, you'll have a big diagram of every key and every single designation through the scale degrees. So just look at that diagram, find A. You'll notice that the 6th chord is an F sharp minor chord. And this is where it behooves you to, again, know these 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chords in these 5 keys in the caged system. So I'm going to put my capo back on, just like so. And I know I'm going to the 6th chord. So now my starting pitch here, here we go, for the 1 chord in the key of A. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. Bada bing, bada boom. I've just gone lower. I told you it was more complicated. Of course, there's a lot of knowledge that goes into your fretboard and basic theory to help you get along with this. But we're going to push ahead. So if we're thinking back in that original key of C, we've already determined that the 1 chord was C, because it's the first scale degree, and the A minor chord was the 6th chord. C, D, E, F, G, A, or just A minor. That's the 6th chord. So what happens after that? So we have da bop doop doop skoo doop dee doop da bop 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 skoo doop dee doop, and now I'm going to an F major chord, to a G chord, back to C, which we already know is 1. So all we need to do is figure out what in the world is that F and G chord in the key of C, or what are we going to call it? The 2 chord, the 7 chord? Well, it's easy. We just count, starting with 1 on the first scale degree. So in the key of C, that is C. Count with me, yeah? Got C, D, E, F. Boom. F is our 4 chord. It makes sense since G is right after F, boom, that it is our 5 chord. Much like we talked about the C to G being a 5th away, it works with chords as well. G is the 5th chord away from C. Anyway, so we know the progression goes 1 to 6, 1 to 6, to our 4 chord, to our 5 chord, to our 1 chord, just like that. And now check out that diagram, or I encourage you to try and fight this in your mind, try it in your mind. It's always fun to conceptualize music theory in your head. You'll find yourself in like a labyrinth, like ever see, but that's the good hard work that you need to do for it to really settle in and be automatic. But if you don't want to do that, check out the diagram. That's why I have it for you. So in the key of A, we already determined that A is the 1 chord because it's the first scale degree, A major. We already determined that F sharp is the 6th chord, and all 6 chords will be minor. All of them in any key, no matter what, it is going to be minor. I promise you. Pinky promise. So we have A to F sharp minor, or the 1 to the 6th chord, then A to F sharp minor, because it repeats 1 to the 6th chord. Now we need the 4 and the 5 chord in the key of A. So let's count. Count with me, please. So we've got A is our 1 chord, B is our 2 chord, C sharp, which you can easily see if you're following the diagram. C sharp is our 3 chord, D major is our 4 chord, and E major is our 5 chord. So let's put that all together. We've got A major, F sharp minor, A major, F sharp minor, D major, E major, back to the 1 chord, A major. You'll notice that all I did was use the original chord progression as the template and figure out which numbers those chords correspond with in that scale, which scale degree, and transferred it over to A. This allowed me to put my capo at the 2nd fret and start a half step lower than I originally did. So let's go through and make sure this works out. So we've got, I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? Back to the 5 chord. Now, if that's still not low enough for me, we've done all the legwork for a little bit of time here. So that means if I need to go lower, I just can think in the key of A, bada bing, bada boom, and drop my capo lower. And here we are. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. We're going to a 4 chord, which is D in the key of A. Isn't that convenient? Back to the 5 chord. We can take the capo off because there's no more frets to go to. And we've gone even now lower. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. And we're going to that 4 chord again, to the 5 chord, to the 1 chord, back to 5. Now, to be super duper thorough with this, we can use any of those keys in the caged system to explore how low we can go. Now, I've already done the legwork for you. So for us to start at the fifth scale degree, or a fifth away, remember that's our starting pitch to sing, we can go all the way down to this B and use E major, because E to B is a fifth. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, and B. Booyah. That is the fifth right there. And since we know it's E, we'll start with E major. We know our chord progression using, we'll say, Roman numerals, because if you saw this on paper, the common way to show a chord with its matching scale degrees with a Roman numeral, either uppercase to indicate major or lowercase to indicate minor. You'll see that in the PDF, of course, too. Anyway, so we know we need our 1 chord, which is E. We know we need our 6 chord. Let's count, shall we? E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C. We're going to a C sharp minor chord. So we have E, C sharp minor, E major, C sharp minor. We need the 4 chord in E now because we know that's the progression. E, F sharp, G, and A. That's our 4 chord, A major, and then A to B is our 5 chord. So we have, this is really low. I heard there was, it's really low. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? If that's the lowest we can go with our 5 keys, then that means we can just go higher from here. So here's some fun. I'm going to use, if I really love E major and it's challenging me enough because there's some bar chords sprinkled in there, and that's the chord shapes I want to use, beautiful. Use those chord shapes. But know that the lowest you're going to go with this particular song is open. So for Funsies McFunzerton, we're going to go to, let's see here. Oh, I've got it. You know, I think I've got it. We're going to go to our 5th fret. No, let's do, yeah, right there. We're going to go to our 8th fret and do this. I'll tell you why the 8th fret in a second. But we will use the exact same chord progression that we determined for E major, the 1, 6, 1, 6, 4, and 5 chord for the opening of Hallelujah. So let's get to business. Starting pitch. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. Going to the 4 chord, but you don't really 5 chord for music, do ya? Being as comfortable as possible with the key of C major. And the chords 1 through 6. The key of A major, chords 1 through 6. G major, chords 1 through 6. E major, chords 1 through 6, and D major, chords 1 through 6, all listed in that diagram in the PDFs below. If you're very comfortable with at least one chord shape for every one of those chords and a lot overlap, don't feel like it's going to be uniquely 30 chords, 6 times 5. There won't be uniquely 30 chords. A lot of it will overlap, much lower than that. Anyway, if you're confident with all of those, and you can find the starting singing pitch, it won't be too difficult for you to find how to get higher or lower when you're singing. One more thing I need you to remember is that if your starting pitch is on a higher string and you want to go lower and you're already in first position or there's no capo on, you have to go to the string lower, which is physically up but sonically lower. I like it. Like on the piano, you don't say, I'm now playing left, I'm now playing right, or whatever. No, you say I'm playing lower and higher. All instruments are based sonically on that. So go to a lower string to find that note, and then continue this way to go lower on your instrument. Much like we did with that opening G, that third string open, went to our 4th fret, 5th string to find that G again, and went down 1/2 step. And boom, now we're 1 step lower when we're trying to sing that song. You saw how low we could go. The reason why we got here to fret 8, I wanted to show you the next thing people use capos for beyond singing, is the fact that I'm now playing in the key of C, but I'm using E major chord shapes. I'm going to show you what I mean right now. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? Taking this off. Now I'll be playing in first position using C major shapes. Same exact thing though. I heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? Bada bing, bada boom. Your 8th fret capoed using E major forms gives you C major chord sounds, or the key of C. So that's the next thing we need to address. I'm going to make sure there's no questions here real quick, because I know we discussed a whole daggum lot. Let me just switch over here, see if I've got any questions. Okay, sweet. No questions. That's fine. But if you have any questions later on, if you view this later, email me or really spend some time reviewing that PDF document below. It will really clarify how chords work and their intervals and blah, blah, blah. All the stuff we've just talked about. I don't mean blah, 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 like to dismiss it. It's just blah, blah, blah. There's plenty to read and check out, and we don't have time to cover all of that in this webinar here, or guitar-nar. I need to keep calling it guitar-nar. Okay, so let's switch gears. We talked about using capos to help accompany a vocal range, your own or somebody else's. That's totally cool. Now we need to use the capo to play in one key anywhere on your fretboard. And the reason why we might do this is for texture, for a difference in sound. And you can find videos on YouTube of groups doing this. You may have already seen groups doing this, but there could be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 guitarists on stage. Some of them are playing with a capo. There might be people with capos in different locations, and some people are playing in open position, and some people are playing without a capo but moving all over the place with movable chord forms. The reason why you'll see those capos out there is because you can play the exact same chord with a completely different texture to it, meaning you can play it with a much higher texture or something that sounds way higher like a ukulele or a mandolin, or you can play it much lower, almost into the bass range. And that's where really understanding this idea comes into play. That idea is you can play in one key where everyone is thinking and understanding that they are in this particular key or tonal center, but using shapes from a different key, more than likely the shapes from the 5 keys from caged, C-A-G-E-D. That distinction is crucial. The key that you're playing in won't necessarily have to do with the shapes from a key you're using. The key you're playing in can use shapes from all sorts of different keys, much like we were using shapes in the key of E, way up here at the 8th fret, to sound as though we're playing in the key of C. We're still playing in the key of C, we're just using different shapes, but still thinking in a certain key. So in that example, we were using shapes in the key of E major for a certain quality and thinking in the key of C, or knowing that the rest of the group or the vocalist or whoever you're playing with or just yourself is in the key of C. So let's roll up our sleeves and get to work here. We're going to use, sorry to grab my capo. We're going to use the key of C to start out with because generally speaking, we learn chords in the key of C first. So if there's beginners watching this, you'll have a decent grasp of those chords at least, at minimum. For those who are more advanced, please think through this with me because it's a lot of fun to do and gives you a sense of mastery on your instrument. So the first thing we got to know here are with those caged keys, C-A-G-E-D, we need to understand where the root of those chords are. In other words, the lowest note in the first chord of those keys. Let's use C, like I said, to start with as an example. So if we played this C major chord here, right in first position, you'll notice that your third finger is playing at the 3rd fret. I also printed out, linked up all the notes on your fretboard below as well. So open those up, that'll be helpful. You'll see that it is the note C. That means that that is the root of our chord C major, just like that. That's important to know because wherever that C moves, or wherever that third finger moves, is creating the root of a new key. Or if we want to play in the same key, we need to put that third finger somewhere along the fretboard that matches with the key we're playing in. So we're going to be thinking here. Are you ready? We're going to be thinking in the key of G major, but us using the capo are very comfortable using C shapes. So what we need to do is find where this C major chord lines up on the note G along our 5th string. If you're looking at that diagram or understand where all your natural notes are, you'll know that C from here goes a whole step up to D, which is the musical alphabet. That D goes up to E at the 7th fret. That E goes to F at the 8th fret. And that G goes next, right at the 10th fret. So if I start playing shapes in the key of C, but with my 3rd finger landing at the 10th fret, I will be playing really in the key of G major. Here's what that means. That means in a group setting, one person could just be playing the key of G here in the first position, but can get boring with everybody playing the same G with the same exact sound quality, meaning everything is in this particular range of our guitar. Wouldn't it be nice to, do something more diverse? That's where the capo right here comes in. We already decided that the C shape starting with our third finger at the 10th fret is going to give us a G major quality. However, if I use open strings here, I'm going to be playing something that doesn't quite fit just a G major chord. Have a listen. The part that doesn't fit so well is that E, that open E string at the top. So what we need to do is add our capo here. And if you were to look at your C shape back in first position, you'd notice that this nut, or this bone and ivory piece right here, is only the fret behind your first finger, or we'll pretend our open fret. So if we build this chord way up yonder with our third finger starting at the 10th fret, we're going to just make sure that our capo looks like that nut in relation to this chord shape. So I'm going to put it right down here. So it's just behind the fret. Perfect. There we have it. So this is at the 7th fret. First finger is at the 8th. Second finger is at the 9th. Third finger is at the 10th fret. Now I am playing a big old giant G major chord. That sounds very, very different than this G major chord open position. The lowest sounding note here was at B. The highest sounding note up here was B. This be an octave higher. So now we've extended the range of this chord to fit all the way to here. This whole portion of the neck is now being involved in that chord, rather than just in first position. So that's how we can use the capo to extend the range of a chord and thus sound much more interesting when accompanying. And that's what's going on when you see players playing the same piece, but in different positions, one using a capo, one not using a capo. They're all thinking in the same key, but the person using the capo perhaps is thinking in different shapes of a particular key. Now, in the previous portion, the first half of this webinar, we lightly touched scale degrees being a chord. So if you're accompanying somebody, that whole exercise we did of finding the 1 chord and the 6 chord and the 4 chord and the 5 chord is what you're going to want to do again, so that you know exactly what chord to play and when, and so that it matches up with everyone else in the group, including the bass player, keyboard player, anybody. Again, it's a common way to describe chord progressions amongst musicians is by Roman numerals. So let's just start with our primary chords. If you're going to start somewhere in terms of learning all those chords in the caged 5-key system, so to speak, the best way to do it is to learn the primary chords first. Those are the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord. So let's just go through them right quick. So we have C. Let's find the 1, 4, and 5. C is going to be 1. D, E, F is 4, G is 5. That's the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord, and the 1 chord right there. Sorry, I played an F and then the 1. I don't know why it just happened. Anyway, so let's go to A, the 1, 4, 5. We've got A major, A, B, C sharp. D is the 4, E is the 5. So we've got our 1 chord, our 4 chord, which is D, our 5 chord, which is E, back to our 1 chord. Let's do G major. G is 1. A, be C is the 4 chord, C to D is the 5 chord. So we have G is the 1 chord, C is the 4 chord, D is the 5 chord, back to G is the 1 chord. 2 keys left. We have E major now. We've got E is the 1 chord, F sharp, G sharp, A is the 4 chord, and B is the 5 chord. So E major is the 1 chord, A major is the 4 chord, and B major is the 5 chord, back to the 1 chord. Finally, we have D major. Let's count it. We've got D, E, F sharp, G is the 4 chord, G to A is the 5 chord, so D, G, A. So we've got our 1 chord going to our 4 chord, going to our 5 chord, which is A, back to our 1 chord, which is D. You can get through a lot of music just knowing those primary chords. Now the secondary chords are just the 2, 3, and 6 chord, so it's not that much more to get under your fingers. And as you already noticed, there are overlapping chords. It's not uniquely 30 new chords you need to learn. A lot of the keys share the same chords. We only have so many letters in the alphabet after all. So anyway, let's keep experimenting with this. I want to go through all 5 of the caged keys in terms of shapes related to a key that we're playing in, just to see how we can explore our fretboard with our capo. Let's now think, I suppose, let's think that we're playing the 1, 4, 5 chord in the key of C. Sure, why not? 4 chord, 5 chord, back to the 1 chord. There we go. And we want to sound slightly different, or we want to expand the range of that progression, that 1, 4, 5 chord. How do we do that? With the capo. So what key are we in? We just decided that we're in the key of C. And that means when we think of the chord shapes we're in, we need to be very aware of the root of that chord. So we're using C. We already used the shapes in the key of C way up here to demonstrate that a C major shape at the 7th fret capoed is just a G major chord down here. So we're not going to do C again. We'll do the remainder of the 5 caged keys, thinking in the key C. So again, whatever we do, we need to find the equivalent of C as the root. So using in first position, we're going to skip it. Let's go straight to A. So we need to understand that when we play the chord A major, however you play it, sorry, guitar's going out of tune here. When you play that A major chord, you'll notice that the lowest root of that chord is your open 5th string. So in this case, our capo, of course, representing this nut is what we call it. In this case, we're going to move that capo to represent an open, in quotations, 5th string. But that open string needs to be the note C in order for it to work. So let's count across. We've got our open A, our 2nd fret is B, and our 3rd fret is C. We're already there. So we know that note is a C. We're going to capo at the 3rd fret. And now we're simply going to be thinking in the key shape of A, the 1, 4, 5, which is A, G, and D. Sorry, that's not, I'm thinking the wrong key. Well, do it with me. See how easy it is to get confused with it? A, B, C, D, and E. A, B, C, D, and E. So let's see if it really changes our range that much. Oh, we weren't doing that groove. This groove. To the 4 chord, which is D. 5 chord, which is E. Again, we're all just playing in the same key of C. Now, because we're thinking of the key shape here, A, using the 1, the 4, and the 5 chords, we will be playing the same chords as the person playing in the key of C here. Just now with a bit of an extended texture, extended range really. Let's keep going. So the next one would be G, C, A, G of the cage system. You'll notice if you play your chord G in first position that the root of that is on the 3rd fret because that note is indeed, you guessed it, a G. So we're going to take this shape, or this root rather, and find a C along our 6th string. So we have G, A is at the 5th fret, B is at the 7th fret, and C is now found at the 8th fret. So all we need to do is make sure we're using our our capo to imitate the nut and its relationship or its distance around that G chord in first position. So in this case, if we play G chord here, we'll notice that we are 1, 2, 3 frets back is where our nut is. So if I go back to my 8th fret, we've got 3, 5, 7, 8. 3 frets back is going to be my 5th fret. So if I capo this at my 5th fret and go through to my G major chord, I'm playing a C major chord. Really, I'm playing a C major chord, but using the shape of G major. So we've got a root here now that is on a C, which is why this works. 1, 4, 5 in the key of G. We've got G, A, B, C, D, and G, A, B, C, messing up again. G, A, B, C is our 4 chord, and D is our 5 chord. G, A, B, C, and D. So we have our G major chord, but really it's in the key of C, so it's our C major chord. We're just thinking in shapes over here. So we have G, shape, to the 4 chord, which is C. It's just the shape. We're really playing an F major chord here. Our 5 chord, which is a D shape, but really we're playing a G major chord back to our 1 chord. All of the shapes I just did here, the 1, 4, 5, are the exact same chords in the key of C. 1, 4, 5. But you hear the range is really broadening. Next one, E. So if you played an E major chord, you'll notice that the lowest root here is our 6th string, which means you need to go and find a C on your 6th string and put that capo down right there. Now I want to be clear, this has been confusing for some of the students here in the studio. It does not matter if a string is capoed for a root or if a finger is pressed down for a root. It just what happens to be the cage system. So in the key of C, our 3rd finger happens to be down for a root. For the key of A, E, and D, our open strings happen to be the root. And in the key of G, our 3rd finger happens to be the root. Just want to clarify that. So you'll notice in the key of E, the capo is right next door to our 1st finger. So we need to find that C, which we already have, which is at the 8th fret. We find that C, capo at the 8th fret. That's 3, 5, 7, 8. That means that that open string is now a C, and we're playing C major. It's crazy. Thinking in the shape of E. So 1, 4, 5, and E are the primary chords. We've got E, F sharp, G sharp, A, and B. So E major, but really playing a C major chord, to A, really playing an F major chord, to B, really playing a G major chord back to E, which is really our C major chord. Now finally, we got to go to D. If you put a D down here in first position, you'll notice that the root is our open 4th string. That's the lowest D found in that chord shape. So our mission is to find a C on our 4th string. Let's go ahead and do that. So we have D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That C is going to be at the 10th fret. Because our open string was the root, we're going to capo right there at the 10th fret. And find the 1, 4, 5 using D shapes, but really going to be playing in the key of C. So D is our 1, E, F sharp. G is our 4, G to A is our 5. So we've got one chord D, G, our 4 chord, A, 5, but it's really just a G major chord to C. So we've moved our capo quite a bit. We've gone from here at our 3rd fret using A shapes all the way up to our 10th fret now using D shapes. And you can see they all have their unique quality to them. Now, what I recommend for you at home, of course, read through that chord construction sheet because it will really help clarify chords in general, how they work together, etc. But go through and start just like I did on primary chords, or the 1, 4, 5 chord in all 5 caged keys, C, A, G, E, D. And then find their equivalents one at a time across using the other 4 keys. So we did the key of C major here. We capoed at the 3rd fret to start using A major shapes. We then capoed at the 5th fret and used G major shapes. We then capoed at the 8th fret and used E major shapes. We then capoed at the 10th fret to use D major shapes. And we got across the entire fretboard playing in one key, but thinking in 4 different key shapes. And that's how we can use the capo to really expand how several guitars can sound. In other words, if we're all just playing right here, it's going to sound mighty the same, as opposed to expanding your entire fretboard using a capo, and of course using chord shapes that you're very comfortable with, expanding all the way up here and getting a totally different sound. Thomas Byers Guitar Studio. I'm Thomas Byers. We're here to make your guitar life easier. Check out our website, thomasbyersguitar.com. And of course, email me with any questions. If I haven't said enough, it's Thomas at thomasbyersguitar.com. You know, that happens. We are going to continue our webinar series. We're getting great feedback from the community out there. In August, we're going to go a little deeper into improvisation and fretboard logic, like I mentioned. So keep an eye on your inbox. I'll be sending reminders and links for all of those too. Thank you all for watching, and have a lovely, lovely day. We're out.